This is another edition of MPN Live, where Microsoft partners connect. Frank conversation, new ideas, and business insight. Now, here's today's host.
Welcome back to MPN Live, the video crossroads for the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Community. I'm your host, Kat Tillman. This is where partners meet to trade views on the issues that matter most to you. And we're calling this the happy hour edition, although there are folks joining us in the morning, but if you're having happy hour in the morning, it's okay. We're going to be focusing on building the future with apps and the cloud. Our first topic will examine apps, the ever-changing force. So you spend thousands on your website. Well, think again. We're entering the age of apps, so maybe it's time to kind of ditch that. So we're going to see what the crew says about that. And is the mobile device, well, kind of the new TV? We'll also dig into that. So before we get into these really interesting topics, let's introduce today's guests. With us here in the fabulous Intercontinental Hotel in Toronto, we have Nigel Gibbons. He's our executive chairman from Unitech. We also have Ray Sharma, president and founder of XMG Studios Incorporated. And then we have Renato DeSenza, president and CEO of Invest Toronto, and Jeff Dunmall, president and managing partner with iMason Inc. Also joining us today is via Skype. We've got the fabulous Paul Spain all the way from down under in New Zealand. He's CTO for Gorilla Technology. And then over the pond, we've got Angus Fox, technology strategist with Applicable. So today we'll also talk about how we're going to have a cloud evolution and examine aspects such as how the cloud is evolving our behavior towards computing. And my big question is whether security is an urban myth. So we'll always respond to your comments you're leaving on the MPN Live Facebook. And don't forget to weigh in on the MPN Live question of the day. We'll get to that as well. And as we're live, we'll be taking your questions and comments via Twitter too. I've got my slate, so I'm checking out who's out there. And so be sure to tag your tweets. And this is the key thing right here, you guys. Tag your tweets with MPN Live and WPC12 and share one reason why you're excited about the Worldwide Partner Conference here in July. And you'll be entered into our sweepstakes to win a full conference pass. Now let's begin with Ray. Clearly, with the companies you've founded like XMG Studios, you're basically invested in the emerging apps economy. So do you think that the app killed the website?
Well, we all know how big mobile is. There's 6 billion mobile subscribers around the world, 1.5 billion mobile handsets sold every year. But December 2011 was a seminal moment in the industry. In December 2011, the number of minutes spent by the consumer per day on the web versus the number of minutes spent in applications finally crossed over. So the number of minutes spent in apps exceeded the aggregate time of all the web properties combined. And I think it speaks to the trend that's happening, and people are changing their behavior from surfing the web to surfing apps, or at least that's what I would propose.
Wow, that's incredible, and I think for a lot of companies who've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on their website, I mean, so what, are we gonna all go and just abandon our websites and just get together that new app? Jeff, what do you think about that thought?
So I think certainly there's obviously a huge surgence of use of apps, but I think the key is that there's room for both, and I think they're converging together. In our business, we're seeing a lot more demand for websites that are designed for mobile, or put more specifically, when you access them on your mobile device, you get an intuitive experience. You don't try and cram it all into the same screen size, even if it's a small one. But apps have a disadvantage as well. I mean, not everybody has an app installed. App stores aren't exactly the easiest things to navigate. People get lost in their sea of apps after page 10 on their page. So they have some disadvantages as well. I think the key is really finding a strategy that includes both for now, and let's hope in the future we can get down to one.
So what do you think, Angus? I know that you've been working a lot more in mobility, and you obviously with your company Applicable. What do you think about what Jeff and Ray are saying here?
It's a perennial debate, isn't it? This discussion between websites for mobile versus native mobile apps for devices. And I think the real answer is it depends on what the application that you're dealing with is trying to do and what you're trying to achieve for the user of it. there are some applications that will need mobile devices and their native capabilities just to access the capabilities on the device, and therefore they can't really be built as web apps. And others are perfectly capable of being delivered to people over the web and don't really matter. And I think what we're seeing when we're talking to our customers is that they just want the right solution for the kind of workforce that they've got, or for the kind of job role that they're trying to deal with. So, for example, a field agent, like a police officer or a fireman, needs a particular kind of application. He may not have cloud access, he may not have internet access. He needs something that's fast and works where he is, where he's located. Whereas a person in a knowledge management kind of a job role would be able to just use a web app on a bigger desktop.
Interesting. So Renato, I know that you work a lot with companies to come into Toronto and invest their businesses here. So obviously you're probably looking at a lot of innovative companies. Are you seeing kind of a trend with the focus of technology companies between, the website or the app or other
Well, definitely,
aspects?
Kat. Well, first of all, Toronto, and I want to welcome all the folks who are on the webcast to be in Toronto for WPC 12. I think you're going to have a blast. Toronto is one of the mobile apps centers of the universe. I have to say that. So while I'd love to say that apps are the be-all and end-all, we have to think business model here. So number one is apps are great for repetitive, and I think as Angus was saying, you're familiar with the application, you know what to do. But the other hand is the business model. Apps can co-opt advertising on main websites. We just have the ICANN's now going to put out generic TLDs. So they're going to put out and try to get people to spend a lot of money on getting URLs. Those URLs are useless if you don't have a place to go visit, if you don't have a place to put your advertising, where apps can co-opt that. So I think it's sort of like going to a mall. Sometimes I just want to browse the department store. Sometimes I want to go to the boutique. When I want to go to the boutique, I know what I want. I know how to get there. I know what they have. But sometimes, you know what? I just want to find out what's new. So I think the business model will still allow the website, particularly we'll see what happens with the new generic top-level domains. There's a lot of brand marketing going into these URLs. What they're going to do, I think they're going to put a lot of money in promoting their websites because that's where you hold the eyeballs. And apps can co-opt that. So we'll see that.
So it's interesting. So Paul, I know that one of the things you do, and with all your time down in New Zealand, is that you host the NZ Tech podcast. And so have you guys been talking about that as well in your part of the world, just in terms of the website versus the app versus whatever new technology is going to come down the path? What do you think on what people are saying here?
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion here, and I think our business deals a lot with sort of smaller to medium businesses, and the idea of of them developing their own rich apps for their business requirements is great. But in a lot of cases, because there are now so many different mobile platforms, in that space it becomes quite challenging in terms of the costs that are associated. So the opportunities that HTML5 affords, I think, will make it easier to develop apps that really run more inside the browser, or can be wrapped up quite quickly into a full-blown app that might move in the future from, say, Windows 8 tablets to Windows phones, and also across onto the other smartphone platforms.
Great, that's interesting. Nigel, you were going to comment?
As a software development company, that's where our pedigree is. I think the actual form that we refer to apps as is a slight misleading issue here. HTML5, I think, is what we're going to see driving a lot of this. We're still in a steep maturity curve with apps. We've got diverse platforms. This is going to have to consolidate in some shape or form. The cost of developing these proprietary apps is high. Small, medium enterprise businesses struggle with that. I think with HTML5, that's delivering websites. It's delivering application functionality that the very few application forms you won't be able to get through HTML5. So I think as we mature into this space, we're going to see these technologies coming together, and it builds a greater freedom for the businesses delivering these end services.
Interesting. Oh, one more comment.
The challenge, Nigel, with HTML5 is you basically everyone has to start almost over. It's a ground-up sort of approach. I saw an app came out a few weeks ago in Canada, at least, and I'm not sure where else it's available. It's called Cloud On. And it takes a virtualization approach. It actually puts a full version of Office on your iPad without really deploying anything on the iPad other than a virtualization like a viewer. and it is slick. Like, it connects back to Dropbox. So you put your Office document up in Dropbox, you fire up Cloud On, and it's not the sort of half-quarter version of Word that's on the iPad, but it's full Word. And there isn't a drop of HTML5 in it, which I find pretty exciting.
I totally agree. I think HTML5 is a rework across a lot of websites, but it's going to be over a period of time. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be an investment as you get website refresh. But I think the cost of doing it in HTML5 as part of an evolutionary refresh of websites undermines the one-off cost of doing applications. Because apps, between £9,000 and £15,000 for just a run-of-the-mill application. As soon as you get into clever stuff, the costs can escalate exponentially.
Interesting, yeah. You're watching MPN Live, where Microsoft partners connect. In fact, I'm seeing here we've got ISG Solutions. Ryan Tech Inc. is back watching with us. Hello, you guys are joining us again today. And we have Dev Connections. You guys, thanks for joining us. So keep tweeting out there. But in a few minutes, we're going to talk cloud evolution. So, and also explore the ongoing controversial topic about whether security issues with the cloud is merely urban myth. But we'll be taking your questions and comments via Facebook and Twitter. And again, for those of you who are joining also to get in on the sweepstakes, we are here in Toronto and we're excited to be here back in July. So tell us why you're excited about WPC, and includes the hashtags MPN Live and the hashtag WPC12. And you'll be entered to win a free pass to the event. So want to see who our winners are. So start tweeting out there. But let's get back to our topic. So we talked about apps, and well, in many cases, I'm thinking that the mobile devices might be the new TV. I mean, do you guys think that we're in that place where it really could be?
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I come from a background where we were broadcast and telecom, and at one point, does it matter? I mean, does it really matter? Because nowadays my TV can stream, with internet TV, Apple TV, but now we see standards emerging. I think Panasonic today just announced first time they're getting a TV that is actually a broadcast quality TV with a standard that will be ubiquitous. I think it was only deployed in Japan before. So I think as a user, I think the number one thing is network gone? Is programmed, when we were kids, not you, but when we were kids, have to watch TV from 8 till 9. I think we've determined that's gone. So really it's...
Sorry, you had to watch TV at a particular time?
Yeah, my kids don't know that, right? Exactly, exactly. So I think, does it matter? I think we're seeing TV and convergence with device. So now your TV has native apps like YouTube embedded, all the new TVs, and your tablets can also now access whether it's your own content.
I know, right?
So I don't know if the issue is picking one or the other. It really is. You're not going to get rid of your big screen TV, and you're not going to get rid of your iPad. I think it's about accessing your own content or somebody else's content when you want and how you want. And you know what? There's going to be better standards than others. Where Wi-Fi is, where Wi-Fi isn't, what are the protocols? I think we have some issues now in just standardizing some of those. So I think the networks are in trouble, for sure. They have to figure out what they're doing. But I think from a content side, we have lots on the future.
I'd love to hear from Ray, because I know you've been working in LA quite a bit lately. So let's hear what the LA story is.
Yeah, we've been working with Sony Pictures on a Ghostbusters augmented reality mobile game, and it's going to set some new standards, I think. But on this topic of interactive TVs and the TV future, CES of this year, if you look at the theme, the clear theme was the multi-screen world. We've seen 3D TVs dominate CES for 2 years in a row, and 3D just hasn't taken. That's a whole separate discussion. But this application on the TV, the way I look at it, it's going to tie in apps again, is that every major computing platform in existence will have an app store, including these interactive TVs. I downloaded a game on my Samsung TV the other day, and I played a game on this, and this is just the beginning. What's really interesting is a multi-screen experience where you're interacting between the tablet, the television, and that the way you're saying, if I could just articulate a little differently in ways, that these are just different screen experiences, whether it's a big screen with a multi-person experience or it's a personal screen. I'm hoping one day in the future, like Star Trek, these devices will have projectable screens that are dynamically changeable depending on the application.
Wow. So I'm, by the way, you guys, there's no camera crew back there. I'm controlling it all on my slate. So what do you think, Paul? We're starting some cool future think here, so weigh in.
Yeah, I was at CES too, and yeah, I mean, it was fascinating just to see the way all of these things are coming together in terms of apps on TVs, and we saw the various 3D TVs and so on. My concern is that if you've got all these platforms, it's actually gonna get fairly confusing. And what I've started to do in my home is to simplify the environment. So I actually don't use any of the features on the TV. I'm connecting my Xbox through it, and the Xbox really is my platform. So all of my apps on the TV are coming through the Xbox. I can control that through my phone. I'm able to access Netflix and Zune and various other services. I think some of the platforms that we've seen starting to emerge, such as the smart TVs, are going to become less relevant over time. And in fact, I just bought a 60-inch TV here for the office, and I got the model that didn't have any of the smart TV features because I couldn't see any benefit of using those. We're already past that in many regards from my perspective.
My son, if he's watching, shout out to Gavin in Toronto. He just turned 4, and on the Xbox comment, he starts watching television by walking up to his machine or to the Xbox and saying, "Xbox, Bing, Thomas," and then he uses his hands to pick this episode he wants, and it starts. He doesn't really even use a remote control, which is pretty cool.
Well, I think that's what's great about Connect, because Connect is really revolutionizing our interaction with with technology. And so I think as we continue to see Connect being involved in our whole portfolio of solutions at Microsoft, that we're going to see a lot of that. And one of the businesses that I worked on here at Microsoft that was just like, whoa, so cool, was Surface. And what we were doing with Microsoft Surface and the natural user interface approach to computing. And so that's like going a long ways away from the mouse. And so even now, it's interesting because, we could go in and probe the idea of whether the mouse is dead. But then I've got the fabulous new Arc mouse that's touch enabled. So it's one of those things. But great conversation. Clearly we've nearly just scratched the surface, but we're going to move on to our next topic. And for those of you online, keep the chatter going. A lot of really good stuff happening. And so while we shift to our cloud topic, is all this hubbub about cloud security really the tech world, the world, is all this hubbub about cloud security really the tech world's urban legend? Is this a fact or fraud? I know, right? This is like a big...
Happy hour over here.
Seriously, I've got my, anyway.
I think the big challenge here is it's a new world for many businesses. It's out there. People perceive it as being in the public domain, and security is a convenient term that people are using. If I talk to a customer audience, I often find the customers don't truly understand. It sounds a bit critical of customers, but they don't truly understand what they mean by security. And when I discuss security with them, I break it down into trust and risk. And understanding what a business's risk tolerances are often exposes the fact that they have been using the cloud for the last 10 years. ISPs, they've had their email out there, they've had data out there. They are using external agencies for processing data. So a lot of what they think is inside has been outside for a long time. So actually moving it to a more disciplined cloud platform can actually raise their security dramatically. Compliance, all these issues we see all the time over privacy leaks, it's a major issue. Now, if I look at the IT audience, you partners out there, I think security is something we tend to sidestep, and it's actually a selling point, particularly with platforms like Office 365 and Azure, and the huge infrastructure and investment Microsoft has made there. It's unparalleled in terms of the security context. You can now put your customers' data and applications in. One example, a recent app we put in for a client, we were getting persistent denial of service against this particular application. I'm not going to mention it, but we were using multiplexed feeds to try and load balance this and try to combat that. But since we put it into Windows Azure, that pain's gone away. The cost of that overhead on infrastructure has disappeared. So there are real security benefits from the cloud.
So Angus, let's have you weigh in on this. So do you want to talk a little bit about your point of view on this topic?
About security?
Yep.
Yeah, it is an issue, and I think there's no substitute for good security practice in the applications that you're delivering to customers. It's often the simplest things that provide gaps that allow people to find exploits that can cause problems for your platform.
Do you think that the problems with that can be more in a consumer-related platform or a business-related platform? What do you guys think?
Well, that actually is part of the problem, because I think what Nigel and Angus were talking about, it's people don't work in a static way anymore, and that's probably, if it would be really easy in the old days when you had your ERP, you logged in from work on the connectivity that was hardwired on the screen that was there. So today that same person could be away, it could be a teleagent away, and by the way, could be doing their Facebook, which we kind of let them do, and not because we think it's good. So it's that sort of dynamic movement of authentication. Who am I at any given point while doing a task? It's really easy if we can say, you're entering this data, you're doing that, security is not that tough. But how do we do it in a mobile app world where some people even bring their own hardware, maybe use their own software, download the app, but also want this liberal connectivity? That, I think, is the challenge. How do we keep track of how the person, minute by minute, second by second, is changing their identity without re-authenticating?
Interesting. And I know you work with knowledge management. I mean, what are you seeing with your customers?
So we're looking at this, take Office 365 as an example. A lot of enterprises right now are struggling with, I mentioned it earlier, with Dropbox. So Dropbox, easy to set up, easy to use, and has this unique problem, or not that unique, but if that individual stops working for a particular company, whatever information that they were using and sharing is still sitting out there, and the account is still valid. So you compare that to the Office 365 model, where with ADFS you can actually federate the identity of that individual so that when they log in, they use their credentials at work. And when they leave work, in fact, if they leave permanently, when their account is disabled, they're shut out of not only the assets that are inside their company, but also the assets that are in the cloud. And so the infrastructure exists already to do this. I think we just need to build on it and extend into the cloud so that we can leverage those same services.
Right, but I think what you're talking about there has always been a little bit of a problem. I mean, you know, I obviously work really closely within social media, and even as you're looking at an individual at Microsoft who might decide to start a Facebook page, and they might not set it up as Microsoft, they're setting it up as an individual, they move on. And so I think that what you're talking about in terms of identities and profiles, that's a problem on the enterprise level, where there really needs to be some policies and guidelines set up on how individuals are setting up instances, whether it's creating an asset repository or creating a profile in a certain, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, beyond Facebook, there's a lot of places where people are using their profile in a professional way. What do you think, Ray?
Well, I got a perspective on cloud. It's going to have a mobile point of view, and mobile bias, and I think cloud is one of the more interesting hardware trends within mobile device computing. We actually hit a very interesting point when the screen displays are as good a quality as your eye display or your eye resolution capability. All of the processing power improvements that happen in mobile from generation to generation to generation, about a third of it would go to powering the display. But now when we hit that sort of Retina class of devices, that power can be redirected. And where I think you're going to see that redirected is into the application layer. And where that links up with the cloud is that between that and cloud, which is basically storing your files on your device onto a massive server farm. And so what that does is it opens up the potential to save tens of billions of dollars in memory per year. Why? Because if you have the same song as I do, as long as the local link is fast enough, they only need to save one copy on that hard drive. And that gets amplified because there's 1.5 billion handsets being sold every year. So yeah. I see cloud affecting mobile, and including, it's one of the big hardware trends.
Well, that's interesting. And as we segue into our next topic, Paul, let's turn to you. I know that obviously the winds of change are blowing here, and we're definitely talking about a lot of that. And so in this cloud era, that really is evolving, as you're saying, the PC usage behaviors. So, so what do you think about this, Paul, in terms of, you know, the PC usage and how all these technologies are really changing?
Well, it's a complex area, and one of the challenges we see, particularly again with the sort of smaller businesses, is who's taking ownership of these things. and smaller businesses don't really know what the challenges are that are involved, what are the risks that they're entering into. And so there's a real opportunity there for partners to get involved and actually to highlight some of the things that have been discussed in the webcast here, and to raise those things with the customer, and potentially take ownership of some of these sorts of areas. And so that creates an opportunity in the partner community to generate revenue from managing these areas, highlighting what they are and showing where the risks can be avoided, because the consumerization of IT that we're starting to see more and more of in various ways, whether it's people bringing their devices or using Dropbox, as was mentioned. Often businesses just see the positive aspects of those and don't sort of step back and take the bigger picture view and realize what the impact of those things is on an ongoing basis. So I think there's some great opportunities for partners to get a little bit more involved and engaged with their customers on how to solve some of these issues, and to actually let them know the issues that they may not even realize exist within their organizations until it's too late.
Well, and that's a really good point, and I'm hearing one of the trends in what we're talking about today is, especially with unified communications, and so with a lot of the products we have, going from Link to Outlook to, and now we're bringing in, one of the things that I love is we've got LinkedIn Social Connector in Outlook. And so we're seeing also now this understanding that consumers are going to cross all of these different components. So we're really looking at how we can build that into some of our solutions. What do you guys think in terms of how we're really starting to connect those pieces, Nigel?
I think perfect segue is the Office 365 example that we heard of a moment ago. Many small, medium enterprise companies have lacked the resource, the time to deploy enterprise-grade systems. They've got access to them now at a price point which is, to be quite honest, unbelievable, I think. They can apply policies, they can apply process rules, which they can do very simply through a user interface, which in the old world would have required huge amounts of infrastructure and IT time investment. And those policies and practices can help address many of those information seepage issues that this blend of the sort of consumer and business world is bringing into organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, and I think, Nigel, this is where, I think some of these start wrapping up where the partners, so the Microsoft partners, play an invaluable role. What we're seeing is talk about what the consumer wants to do, what you want to do with your consumer, or what you want to do with your back office. This is where the partner is the most vital link in saying, you know what, this is kind of off the shelf, we do this. This piece here, if you really want to use LinkedIn and Outlook this way and do it for an operation, well, we might need to top up security, we might need to make it tighter. So I think this is where I think the future is bright for people who are involved in being the partner, because the small, medium enterprise cannot do it on their own. They cannot make these assessments, but they do need an honest broker to help them say, you know what, you can do it with off the shelf. You know what, we need to put a little bit more work on this one. So I think the future is bright.
Jeff, do you want to make a last comment on this topic?
Sure. I'd say 3/4 of our customers have OCS or Link deployed internally, and they all use it effectively to check to make sure that their colleagues ready to go for lunch. I mean, we've got the IM stuff working well, but there are so many business application opportunities that we can leverage. Like click to chat. You've got a website. Your customers are coming to it. They have a question. You already have instant messaging technology internally. You have all of the infrastructure required to enable your customers to click into the call center and interact over that interface. But we're not quite there yet. It hasn't been deployed completely. I think there's a lot of partner opportunity.
No, that's true. Well, you guys are weighing in. I'm seeing a lot of really great tweets coming in. And Cloud Factors, you're talking about could cloud PC security and management with Windows and Tune be the answer for SMB? Somebody have a good answer for that?
I totally agree. I think Intune is the hidden killer here in terms of dealing with many of these issues, and it's a perfect link for partners, particularly those infrastructure partners out there who've been challenged with how they're going to continue with their new business model into the cloud world. And it's perfect. Intune is a tool there because it allows them to manage those desktops, reduce the amount of infrastructure investment for their small, medium enterprise customers, but give them a full enterprise service.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else want to comment on that? Angus or Paul, what do you guys think about that question with regards to Windows Intune?
Yeah, I mean, well, in
Paul?
terms of Intune, we've started having a look at that. It still doesn't seem to be something as a product that has sort of reached, I guess, a full maturity. And so there are a few areas there that I think have maybe held back adoption, but I think that will start to pick up this year as Intune sort of grows in terms of its feature set and in terms of the maybe some changes around the licensing model as time goes on.
Yeah, I think it is a critical product, especially for customers who are using Office 365. But I think probably the most important thing that we'd like to see for Office 365 is better integration with Enterprise Voice with Link, and I think that would be something that would be very welcome for us, and because we're seeing a tremendous amount of demand for Link, and Link encourages us to have an Office 365 and an Intune conversation, and those things don't always completely connect.
Yeah, no, it's true. And Aguilar here on Twitter, he says Windows Intune is a champion service on the cloud, is the next natural step after a customer adopts Office 365. And so I think that's really interesting as customers are adopting, really kind of rolling out the services that are going to really build a really good solution set for them. So lots of really good stuff. Why don't we move on now to my favorite part of the show. It's the question of the day. And so please weigh in on Facebook page. And so today's question for our guests, we all know that technology has all the power to take the world and just turn it upside down. I mean, clearly we're in it right now. And so if you think of the advent of the Gutenberg press going way back, I know.
Thinking about that this morning.
The Gutenberg press, exactly. Well, and then there was Alexander Bell with the telephone, and then who was the one that invented the internet? Was that Al Gore? Anyway, and well, now the cloud. What technology has been the biggest disruptor for your business? So let's start with Nigel and move down the row here.
Well, technology is my business. In terms of disruption, yes, it saw me make a career change, but it's revolutionizing people's lives. It's allowing them to reach out to new friends, create new virtual worlds for themselves. But instead of focusing too much on technology, I think we need to get the balance back in many respects. I see almost the pendulum swung too far in one direction, particularly from a social perspective. Too many people are literally jacked in to the online world 24/7. And I think just take a breather, have a look out of the window. There's a real world out there as well.
That's a good point. So Ray, what do you think?
Well, XMG happens to be sort of in a vortex of a bunch of disruption. One area that we seem to have really caused a lot of bit of fuss is in transmedia. So transmedia is everything from augmented reality, which is interstitching virtual objects into the real world. We released a game called Totally Amped, an app that is the world's first made-for-mobile sitcom. So transmedia in the context of television. We've worked with movies, companies as well, that additional to what I mentioned earlier. So we're seeing sort of apps cross all these different boundaries. And again, I know I'm a proponent, I'm heavily biased towards this, but I'm going to keep delivering this message that, what we see as the app is your remote control for your personal media content. You download your music, you get your song. You download your movie, you get your movie. But you download your application as we put out 1.1, 1.2, and so on. We can sell you a ringtone, we can provide you a comic book. We even have a toy where you put your device in it, it provides a first-person shooter that we've done with a local company called Spin Master. I see lots of disruption. I could literally go on for a long time, and
Okay, so I've got my USB port in my brain right now. Are you going to plug it in right here?
Don't need a USB.
Oh, that's right. Even that's.
Well, but I think, Kat, I think really the biggest thing I've seen, and I'm a little bit older, but it's really the choice. You have a couple things happen. This phenomenon between real-time communications and not real-time. It's weird how they can, it just crossed the universe. We've changed the paradigm of time. You can be texting in non-real time, or you can be talking or doing a live Skype session. You could be working, you could be playing, right? And I think that's the choice now, and how to cope with that choice. How to unplug, like Nigel said, no one to unplug. Well, I am unplugged. I'm just texting. It's not a real live conversation. Meanwhile, when you're talking, you think you're plugged in. I think now the power of presence, the ability to get people when you want, or or not to get people when you don't want them in real time. And it's interesting the choices we have now. So I think it's coping with the choice of how do I want to communicate and how do I want to engage, which is the number one issue for all our customers. Is it's all about content and engaging, whether it's your employees or your customers, is how do they want to digest the blog, how do they want to adjust the interaction. So I think the biggest thing I've seen, I have more choice now, which is a great opportunity, but it's also the disruption of learning how to deal with it. Exactly. And so choice of time and choice of what I'm doing with my time.
That's interesting, Jeff. What do you think?
So at iMason, we started 12 years ago, and if I think back over that period of time, for me the biggest technology disruptor is search. The search engine in both our personal and our working lives has had a huge impact, and I think we're just still starting. If you think about how you work when you sit down at your desk, you don't spend much time in a search engine. In fact, you probably spend very little time in a search engine, and yet your job most likely involves knowledge. I think we've nailed creating it. We are very good at creating information, but finding it is still excruciatingly difficult.
Well, I think we're doing a good job with Bing, and so we're finding things there. Angus, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think the most fundamental thing that I'm observing at the moment is this change in the way that businesses communicate with each other, and that's happened as social media and particularly Twitter has become normal behavior. 3 years ago, if you said you were going to base your entire advertising strategy and your entire business-to-business connection mechanism on social networks, people would have thought you were mad. And now this is how people work. It's how people find business. It's how they find each other. You're right. The previous guy said you don't search for things anymore using search engines. Things find you if they're interested in you. And that is a phenomenally exciting time for us. So we have to try and find ways to take that to our customers and bring them forward, because in lots of cases, my customers don't understand it. They don't understand why they need to get involved in it. And you have to show them and take them on a journey. And now is the time to do that.
Great. And Paul, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that there are so many disruptive technologies now, and the challenge is actually choosing what are the technologies that are going to be disruptive for an individual or for an individual organization or a part of those organizations. And again, that creates a great opportunity for partners who are willing to really get close to their customers and engage with their genuine business issues, rather than sitting back and waiting for the customer to say, hey, can you help me with how we improve productivity across our organization, how we communicate, how to use social media. And I think the partners that will do well over the next few years, as we see more and more that moves to the cloud, there'll be segments of partners' businesses that maybe will dry up, but there will be a lot of more opportunities to be strategic with customers. And so, yeah, there's really a whole suite of disruptive technologies for partners and customers to get on board with.
Terrific. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces online. Thanks, Shane Perrin, and I also see Gwen Bonaparte, you joined us again, and we also have on here Mizerma Amin, you're always tweeting with us, so thank you guys for joining today's broadcast. And I want to thank our guests as well. We've got Nigel Gibbons, Executive Chairman, Unitech, Ray Sharma, he's President and Founder of XMG Studio Inc. Remember, this is happy hour, so I'm clearly at this point drunk. Renato DeSenza, President and CFO of Invest Toronto. Come see him in WPC 12.
Come on down to Toronto, July. We'll see y'all.
Jeff Dunmall, President and Managing Partner, iMason Inc. And joining us via Skype across the pond, we have the fabulous Angus Fox, Technology Strategist with Applicable. And we've got Paul Spain in lovely New Zealand. You guys are having your summer there, so enjoy your day there in the sun. And you're CTO of Gorilla Technology. Good to see you. And that's our show. I just want to remind you guys, keep tweeting your reasons for why you're excited to come to Toronto. Use your hashtag MPN Live in WPC12, and you might be one lucky winner of a free pass to come out and join us here in Toronto. And so remember, MPN Live is where Microsoft partners stay connected. Tell us what you think. From everyone at MPN Live, thanks for watching.
You've been watching another edition of MPN Live, where Microsoft partners connect. Keep the conversation going. Visit the Microsoft Partner Facebook page to comment on this program or suggest guests or show topics. Thanks for watching MPN Live.